It's the series that reinvented police drama for television in the 80s, fueled by hot cars, hot music, and hot fashion. Stylish and popular, it defined a generation for a generation and helped a city check itself into rehab. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Miami Vice. Miami Vice is a television series that ran 114 episodes over 5 seasons from 1984 to 1989 on NBC in the US. It's a cocaine-laced, pastel-colored police drama set to the hottest top 40 hits of the 80s. Ricardo Tubbs is a New York cop on a mission of vengeance. After witnessing the murder of his brother Rafael, also a New York cop at the hands of drug dealers, he is determined to find the man responsible. That man is a Colombian drug lord named Esteban Calderon. He fled to Miami, and now he's also responsible for the murder of Eddie Rivera, a Miami police officer and the partner of James "Sonny" Crockett. Crockett has been working a case for months, trying to get all the pieces together to finally put Calderon in jail. As he mourns the loss of his partner, Tubbs arrives hot on the trail of Calderon himself. Undercover police work is a brutal lifestyle that cost Crockett his marriage and custody of his son. A lifestyle that blurs the line between right and wrong, and whether they want to admit it or not, it's exactly the kind of high that Crockett and Tubbs can't live without. They're both set in their ways and hell-bent on revenge, but it's going to take trust in each other to bring Calderon to justice, because it looks like Calderon has a lot more tools at his disposal than they thought. He's got a lot of people working for him because he has a lot of money, enough to buy him hitmen, drivers, smugglers, and crooked cops. Crockett and Tubbs are fighting a war on two fronts as their worlds fall apart around them. Just another day on patrol for the police officers of Miami Vice. Thank you to Factor for sponsoring this video. Click the link in the description below and use code 50GALAXY for 50% off plus free shipping on your first box today. Look, when it comes to eating better, it's not always about budget or time or the desire to do so. For me, it's all three. It's too expensive, I'm too busy, and it's just so much easier to eat whatever. Factor can help you solve those problems. The math checks out. It's less expensive than getting takeout. It takes around 2 minutes to heat up and prepare meals that are dietitian approved and nutritious, and they taste good. Factor delivers fresh, never frozen meals right to your doorstep, and that's the key difference from other 2-minute meals you might purchase. Fresh ingredients that taste fresh. You can't lie to your mouth. Factor has snacks, smoothies, and more, a variety of easy options for the entire day like breakfast, small bites, and more. All of that in a flexible schedule that works for you. Get as much or as little as you need by choosing 4 to 18 meals per week, plus you can pause or reschedule your deliveries at any time. Factor is now owned by HelloFresh, and with a wider array of meal plans to choose from, there's something for everyone. It's easy to switch between the brands to make your meal planning even easier. Head to Factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50GALAXY to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50GALAXY at Factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. And thanks again to Factor. In July of 1981, NBC was on the bottom of a ratings three-way with ABC and CBS. NBC was last in primetime, last in daytime, last in kids programming. The only winner they had was The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and even he was thinking of taking his show to ABC. It was so bad for NBC that ABC and CBS didn't even factor NBC into their programming decisions anymore, as if NBC didn't exist. Their actions and reactions were motivated purely by competition against each other. What are you going to put in for this? And while that was a dire situation, if you were an NBC employee or stockholder, at least one person saw it differently. 32-year-old president of entertainment Brandon Tartikoff saw risk-free opportunity, because when you're already at the bottom, the only place you can go is up. And so his programming decisions were driven by doing whatever ABC and CBS weren't doing. He took chances, he moved things around on the schedule until they found their spot, and he commissioned a lot of new shows. Between 1981 and 1983, NBC climbed the ratings ladder across multiple demographics. They racked up critically acclaimed series like Hill Street Blues, Fame, and Sane Elsewhere, roster stalwarts like Gimme a Break, Knight Rider, and Remington Steele, and hits like The A-Team. According to Brandon Tartikoff, the idea for Miami Vice came from Brandon Tartikoff. He frequently told the story that during a brainstorming session one day, he had an idea for a show and wrote down the words MTV Cops on a piece of paper, then gave that note to Anthony Yerkovich. Yerkovich was a writer and producer who spent 3 years as a writer and producer on NBC's Hill Street Blues, so he knew a thing or two about TV cops and hit television series. That said, he told the creation story of Miami Vice a little differently. According to Yerkovich, Tartikoff had absolutely nothing to do with the creation of Miami Vice and called Tartikoff's story a falsehood. And furthermore, it's a story Tartikoff didn't start telling until after Miami Vice was successful. The true story was that Yurkovich read a Wall Street Journal article that said 20% of unreported income in the United States came from Dade County, Florida, even though it had only half of 1% of the nation's population. That unreported income was from crime, drugs, prostitution, extortion, and white-collar crime. Furthermore, the article revealed that every time the federal government indicted an individual for running a criminal organization, all the stuff, all the cars, all the clothes, were given to local law enforcement agencies to aid in their pursuit of additional criminal organizations. It gave the undercover cops on the street the ability to perfectly blend in with the drug dealers and mob bosses they were attempting to impersonate and arrest. At the same time, Yurkovich was fascinated by the growing pop culture phenomenon of music videos and, yes, MTV. As he put it in a 2024 interview, quote, "I wanted to set the story to music in a dialectical fashion so that it commented on the narrative and characters, and vice versa." Yurkovich originally pitched the idea to Universal as a feature film about two vice cops in Miami. Universal declined because they already had a movie in production about the drug business in Miami starring Al Pacino as Tony Montana, aka Scarface. That movie was Scarface. Instead, Universal suggested the concept might work better as a TV series, and Yurkovich agreed. Yurkovich pitched the idea called Gold Coast to NBC, who bought it as a weekly dramatic series. Then he wrote the pilot. Setting a police series in South Florida was his goal from the beginning. He'd been thinking about a project in South Florida, learning about the geography, the economy, the places, and the people for several years while he was working on Hill Street Blues. He called it a modern-day American Casablanca, with a fascinating mix of people and cultures from Central America and Cuba, twisted by the drug trade. That said, he didn't want to be tied up with the day-to-day responsibility of producing a series, so Universal brought in Michael Mann as showrunner. Michael Mann was a writer and producer who wrote 4 episodes of the 1975 series Starsky and Hutch and the pilot for the 1978 TV series Vegas, which featured Robert Urich as a detective. He wrote and directed the 1979 TV movie The Jericho Mile, for which he won an Emmy, and made his feature film directorial debut in 1981 with Thief, starring James Caan as a guy trying to get out of the diamond smuggling business. Mann, of course, would later go on to create and direct feature films like Manhunter, Heat, and Collateral. Today, he's most associated with stylized dramas about the criminal underworld. Mann also rebutted the idea that Brandon Tartikoff or he himself had anything to do with the creation of Miami Vice beyond the title, saying, quote, "Sometimes people say I created the show, but that's Tony Yurkovich's credit. When Universal asked me to be executive producer, I said I had to have creative control and I wanted to change the title to Miami Vice. I wanted to give it the same sensibility as a contemporary feature film." Finding the right actors was a challenge. Multiple auditions were held and the process took so long that production of the pilot was delayed twice. Yurkovich was convinced that Don Johnson was the right person for the role of Sonny Crockett, but NBC wasn't so sure. See, if Johnson had done anything in the industry up to that point, he had proved that he was a loser. He'd been a lead in 5 different pilots, 3 of them at NBC, and none of them were picked up for series. Yurkovich's insistence that Johnson had exactly the right kind of swagger, that he was slick and charming despite his record of failure, proved to be correct. As for Philip Michael Thomas, he was determined to get the role and proved to be the perfect fit for Michael Mann, who wanted someone to play Tubbs as Crockett's equal, not his sidekick, building on his role as a police officer in The Wizard of Speed and Time.
And gasp in awe that we actually got big-name stars to be in this. You've got to be off to see The Wizard, speeding to a theater near you.
As he put it, quote, "I wanted to invert how Black Americans were represented in series television. The character of Tubbs was always going to be a black man, but I didn't want him to be Crockett's assistant, the Black Tonto to his Lone Ranger. I wanted him to be erudite, bilingual, have sophistication." Gregory Sierra played Lieutenant Lou Rodriguez through the first 4 episodes, at which time he was killed off, spoiler alert, and replaced by Edward James Olmos as Lieutenant Martin Castillo. Other series regulars included Sandra Santiago as Detective Gina Calabrese and Olivia Brown as Detective Trudy Joplin.
It's new, it's hot. It's Miami Vice by After Six Formal Wear and Sam Myers Formal Wear. Powerful pastels, perfect for weddings and other formal affairs with bold new colors and cuts. Miami Vice by After Six and Sam Myers. Authentic, in stock. When you want it, they've got it. With Sam Myers' famous quality and selection. The best in formal wear for the best of times. Sam Myers Formal Wear, with 6 locations to serve you.
Yurkovich set the tone during the first 4 episodes, then handed the rest of the series off to Michael Mann. It's Mann's bold aesthetic choices that became the hallmarks of Miami Vice. Especially when compared to other police and detective-themed series on the air at the time, Miami Vice's visual presentation, editing, and production design were a stark contrast to shows like Magnum P.I. and Murder, She Wrote. Mann very deliberately attempted to give the show a particular look. He made a set of rules that applied to costumes, sets, props, and locations, which went as far as the exclusion of certain colors. No earth tones. Shot on location in and around Miami for roughly $1.3 million per episode, Mann and the crew didn't hesitate to mold the city itself to match their vision of what they needed to show on screen. A Miami that could exist if it wanted to. With the eye of an artist considering every color on the canvas, they went to great lengths to coordinate the color of the locations with the props and the costumes. If a house was in the shot and it wasn't the right color, that house got painted. Music was a huge part of the aesthetic, the storytelling, and the overall appeal of the show. Miami Vice and the use of popular music perfectly positioned the show to take advantage of stereo sound, which was adopted as the broadcast standard by NBC in July of 1984 and rolled out to affiliates through 1985. Original music for the series was composed by Jan Hammer. Ironically, part of Mann's vision for the series was to give Hammer complete creative freedom to do essentially whatever he wanted to, and Hammer delivered with a synthesized sound unlike anything else on television. The use of pop music meant a budget line item of $10,000 or more per episode for licensing the original tracks. Viewers tuned in just to see which new songs got Miami Vice music videos. Not many TV series before Miami Vice released a soundtrack album. It featured hits like Glenn Frey's Smuggler's Blues and Phil Collins' In the Air Tonight, and hit #1 on the Billboard 200 album chart. The theme song itself, written and performed by Jan Hammer, hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and was nominated for 2 Grammys. Miami Vice started slow out of the ratings gate. It took a few episodes for it to find its feet and thereby its audience. Halfway through season 1, it was ranked 41st, which prompted a few minor changes that proved to be the final pieces needed to turn it into a pop culture icon. First off, Crockett's pet alligator Elvis was written out of the show, but more importantly, much of the humor found in early episodes was dropped. And Olmos's Lieutenant Castillo replaced that humor with dramatic gravitas. When the audience finally found the show, they realized that it was the hippest, coolest show on television. Take that, Jessica Fletcher. By the end of the first season, Miami Vice moved from 41st place to 7th. It quickly supplanted Hill Street Blues as the go-to television police drama and was far more popular with younger audiences. It racked up 15 Emmy nominations to Hill Street's 11, including a Best Actor nomination for Don Johnson. In the end, it only took home 4 actual Emmys out of those 15 nominations. As it turned out, voting members used their platform to send a message to Miami Vice and NBC about what they perceived to be a celebration of sex, drugs, and violence throughout. That said, with accolades like that, it's no surprise that Miami Vice was a literal trendsetter. The conceptual Miami that Yurkovich and Mann created featured fashions that weren't typically seen in the US. Don Johnson's Italian-inspired wardrobe became ubiquitous. T-shirt, sport coat combo, sleeves pushed up, Ray-Ban sunglasses, 5 o'clock shadow, linen pants, and shoes without socks.
Glass house, white Ferrari, live for New Year's Eve, sloppy steaks at your Fanny's, big rare cut of meat with water dumped all over it, water splashing around the table.
According to Johnson, part of that style was driven by practicality. It was so warm in Miami that he started pushing up the sleeves of his jacket. He got rid of the belt and the socks because it was just too hot. The costume designers agreed that form followed function to a certain degree. All of these cops and crooks were wearing shoulder holsters, so they needed loose-fitting jackets. But the colors were generally dictated by the locations. Crockett and Tubbs changed outfits an average of 5 to 8 times per episode. The no earth tones rule meant approved colors like pink, blue, green, and all manner of pastels. Viewers followed suit. Ray-Ban saw demand for the kind of sunglasses worn by Crockett double from $360,000 per year to $720,000.
This year, tradition is out, and Miami Vice is in.
This outfit would run you about $670. Can you imagine how much it would be if you had to buy socks too?
While that demand also applied to the cars that featured on Miami Vice, it wasn't necessarily reflected in their sales due to their frequently high-end and exotic nature. Crockett, Tubbs, and the various drug dealers of the week could be seen driving everything from Crockett's Ferrari Testarossa to BMWs, Maseratis, DeLoreans, Porsches, Mustangs, Camaros, and the iconic Lamborghini Countach. Miami Vice became a hub for guest stars, veterans like Dean Stockwell, Pam Grier, and Brian Dennehy, future stars like Bruce Willis, Ving Rhames, Ed O'Neill, Lawrence Fishburne, Viggo Mortensen, Liam Neeson, Wesley Snipes, and Julia Roberts all appeared. Casting director Bonnie Timmerman said most of the guest stars happened because she saw someone and fell in love with them and tried to fit them in somewhere. That went double for musicians because music was such an integral part of the series. Sheena Easton had a recurring role as Crockett's wife Caitlin Davies, Glenn Frey, Phil Collins, Gene Simmons, Miles Davis, and James Brown all turned up. Heck, there are so many guest appearances by well-known actors and musicians that there's an entire Wikipedia page dedicated exclusively to cataloging all of them. Miami Vice helped push NBC out of the basement into second place in the ratings through its first season into 1985, along with new shows like The Cosby Show, Hunter, Punky Brewster, and V the Series. And then into first place through its second season into 1986 with newcomers 227 and The Golden Girls. But Miami Vice's third season saw significant changes driven by a new time slot, contract issues with Don Johnson, and Michael Mann's departure from the series. After Knight Rider vacated the 9 p.m. Friday time slot, Miami Vice moved up from 10 p.m. Friday. But that put it in direct competition with CBS's Dallas, a proven ratings juggernaut with a record of killing nearly every show that went up against it. Miami Vice fared no better as ratings began to slip. That was the real Friday night death slot. Johnson wanted a raise and threatened to quit the show if he didn't get one. He even walked off production for nearly a week. NBC started talking publicly about replacing him with Mark Harmon, formerly of St. Elsewhere, but eventually acquiesced to Johnson's demands, tripling his salary from $30,000 per episode to $90,000. Philip Michael Thomas went about his business quietly and got a raise from $25,000 to $50,000 per episode. Michael Mann did leave to work on his new NBC series Crime Story starring Dennis Farina, but before he left, he passed the executive producer baton to Dick Wolf, who had been a writer during Miami Vice's second season and previously won an Emmy writing for Hill Street Blues. Season 3 saw scripts tighten up and focus on stories ripped from the headlines. Episodes that dealt with more real-world issues and the real human cost of the drug-plagued coast of Florida instead of glamorizing the fast cars and fashions. Mann's rules about color were lifted as everything got darker. By the end of Season 3, most of the original writers were gone and Miami Vice had slipped to number 27 in the ratings. The downturn continued through Season 4 to the point where NBC moved it back to its original time slot Friday night at 10 p.m. to try to stop the bleeding. The Writers Guild strike in March of 1987 during the final stretch of Season 4 seemed to drive away what was left of the original fan base. A fifth season was no longer a certainty. In fact, NBC intended to order a half season of just 13 episodes, but finally ordered a full season, knowing that, in all likelihood, it was going to be the end of the series. The 2-hour series finale aired in May of 1989, and while it was technically the final episode, it wasn't the final new episode to be aired. 3 episodes that had been preempted for one reason or another aired for the first time in reruns after the series finale, and another aired a year later on the USA Network. All of the episodes are included in home media collections and syndication packages. Miami Vice creator Anthony Yerkovich was drawn to Miami by the crime. It's what made him want to tell the stories and create the series. But city officials didn't love that the city was being cast in such a negative light, broadcast into the living rooms of people around the country. However, they learned to practice humility as the millions of dollars per episode rang through registers. It is said that tourism to the region increased as people arrived hoping to experience the high-fashion pastel-tinted world created by Yerkovich and Mann. Many of the areas that appeared in Miami Vice were rehabilitated to attract investors and tourists. The popularity of the show helped efforts to preserve the Art Deco architecture and turn South Beach into a destination. There were plenty of negative critical assessments of the series with respect to violence or concerns that Miami Vice was all flash and style with no substance. But the viewers responded in such a compelling way that NBC, ABC, and CBS recalibrated their programming accordingly with shows that looked, sounded, and acted like Miami Vice. Like the city of Miami, Miami Vice was reinvented by series executive producer Michael Mann. In 2006, a feature film reboot of the series starred Colin Farrell as Crockett and Jamie Foxx as Tubbs. It barely made back its budget as critics praised Michael Mann's directing and visual style, but audiences did not connect with the overly serious story, perhaps expecting a more nostalgic comedic turn like 2004's Starsky and Hutch or 2005's Dukes of Hazzard. Nearly 20 years since the feature film and 40 since the series began, a second feature film adaptation will try to connect with audiences. Top Gun Maverick director Joseph Kosinski is hoping to recapture that magic sometime soon. The Miami Vice that became a pop culture icon is really the Miami Vice of the first 2 seasons. That's not to say that the other 3 don't matter. It's that they weren't the conduit of style and statement that the first 2 were. It's that aesthetic that we think of not only when we think of the series, but when we think of the 80s in general. The influence on fashion, music, and television storytelling persist over 40 years later. That cultural impact and style is reflected in 2002's Grand Theft Auto Vice City, a not subtle homage to a version of Miami that Michael Mann and Anthony Yerkovich created for the show. As Joyce Millman put it in her post-mortem of the series after it was canceled in 1989, quote, "The most seductively cinematic TV series ever, Vice offered Primetime's ambitious and artiest direction. It was photographed like sensual, kinky fashion layouts come to life." A snapshot of the entire era, she said the series, quote, "captured the moment in the 80s when greed became gospel, when consciences bit the dust, when those who made money in the Reagan Revolution realized that the party was just beginning." It was a look into a city that didn't exist until it was birthed into reality by visionary creators, literally painting over the ugly parts to make them somehow more representative of the past as we look back from the future. Exotic cars around every corner, a pink and pastel world punctuated with neon, a thin powder blue line standing between good and evil called Miami Vice. Thank you for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who already are. Please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/toygalaxy. Several different tiers to address your specific Secret Galaxy needs. Check out the Secret Galaxy merch shop at secretgalaxy.shop. All merchandise is physically in stock and ready to ship. Links to all of this in the description below. And let us know in the comments down below if you watched Miami Vice then or have watched it since. I was aware of it when it had originally aired, but I was only 8 years old. It wasn't really made for me. That said, I'm kind of glad that I didn't watch it because there's a lot of pop music songs that I would have very different associations with if I had. There's a lot of fun pop music songs that were featured on that series that I like, and I don't need them to inspire images of drug dealers, murder, and police car chases every time they come on the radio. There's plenty of music that already has that as the central theme. Phil Collins doesn't need to be in that category. It's so hot and I'm so tired.